Okay, so we are now recording. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, Ann. How's it
Um,
going?
Good. So, thank you so much for being here today. So, to anyone who's watching this recording, we have with us Jonathan Kerth, who graduated from Willamette in 2018. I got that right, right?
Yeah, almost 3 years now.
Gosh, that's so crazy. And Jonathan graduated with a degree in psychology as well as a minor in women's and gender studies, correct?
Yep. And philosophy and double
And
minor. Yep.
philosophy. I forgot philosophy. My goodness. Okay. So, Jonathan has worked as a recruiter for a couple different organizations for the past few years since graduating, and is based in Seattle, has been since graduating.
Mhm.
So, um, hopefully, seniors that are watching, you were able to view the video that we sent out. If not, you can get in touch with Career Development, and we will definitely show that to you. But I think without further ado, I would love to turn it over to Jonathan and let you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about maybe the company that you work for, and then kind of dive into some of the inside scoop from the recruiter perspective about
Sure.
resumes, cover letters, and all that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, as I said, I've been in recruiting since graduation. So I graduated, May timeline, moved up to Seattle, and then spent about a month and a half searching for a job before I found my first job out of college, which is, I think, reasonable to expect, if not longer, for your search. I started in a recruiting coordinator role. So something that I'll talk about as you look for jobs is looking for entry-level positions. So you might say that you're looking to be a marketing manager. And there are kind of career paths to get there that people don't always see or look for. And that's the approach I took. So I kind of, in a coordinator role, started doing anything they needed me to do as a foot in the door. And then I spent about 2.5 years at that company. And then for the last 3 months, I've been working with a startup here in Seattle called XSpanse. What we do and our mission as a company is we're creating a platform, basically an app and a website for people to go and buy a home, actually get a mortgage, all the way from looking at what you can afford to getting pre-approvals, buying the home, and then actually paying off your loan. That whole process. It's a pretty outdated process right now, so we're looking to create an app and website to make that smooth. And then we're also doing that for banks as well to make that process a lot smoother as well. So I've hired a whole variety of roles, from software engineers, designers, consultants, data engineers, pretty wide array of roles. And I love it. I think recruiting is really fun, and there's a lot of unknowns about the hiring process. And I've learned a lot on my own, just kind of going through the process as well. And so excited to kind of talk more about what resumes and cover letters look like, because that's probably the first step of demystifying the whole process. But do you want me to dive into kind of my thoughts on cover letters and resumes overall, or do you have any
Yes.
specific questions for me?
Yeah, that would be wonderful. I think first kind of, and
Mhm.
I know I had sent you some questions in advance. I think a lot of it is we give a lot of advice in career development about what makes a good resume
Yeah.
and what makes a good cover letter. I think it's really valuable for students to hear from a recruiter, like what catches your eye,
Mhm.
what makes you read, what makes you keep reading. So yeah, anything like that, just to kind
Yeah.
of get us started, would be great. Yeah.
Sure. So I'll start. The biggest thing is the difference between resumes and cover letters, in my opinion. What I really don't like to see is a cover letter that tells me exactly the same thing as a resume. How I view it is a resume is a summary of what you've been doing, who you are. It's quick and short. That's why it should be a page, unless you're like 20 years into your career and have all that background. But it should be really short and just a summary of saying kind of what your past has in common with what the job is that you're applying for. And then the cover letter is a really great opportunity that people don't always use, but it's basically your opportunity to say, this is why I'm a fit, that you might not see on my resume. It's what you want to be doing. It's creating that story for the recruiter, so I don't have to just on the resume alone. So it should be pretty quick read, 3/4 of a page. It should be not about what you've been doing. You might mention, oh, I did this in this role and that's why it is, but don't walk yourself just through the resume. And cover letters are kind of going away slowly from what I've seen. It's becoming less and less popular, and sometimes you'll see it as optional. I think it's pretty rare that you see it as mandatory nowadays to submit a cover letter, but you do still see it sometimes. And so I would say, with a cover letter, we can start there and then go into resumes, because there's a lot more to talk about resumes. I wrote some notes. A lot of people say, like, how do I start for a cover letter? The only thing I say is just dear hiring manager. Everyone's going to have a hiring manager for each role. It doesn't have to be a manager, but it's someone that is not the recruiter that's responsible for the role. So it's a general way. Stay away from the dear Mr. or Mrs. or picking a random person in the company. If you do see that there is the recruiter and you know which recruiter it is, then you can put their name there. But I get that question all the time, is how do I start a cover letter? So it's just dear hiring manager. Keep it short, less than a page. Both a resume and cover letter should be less than a page, and it shouldn't be too long. I want to be quick. I don't spend a ton of time reviewing applicants, like less than a few minutes, more than like the 13 seconds that people say about a resume, or 3 seconds. And yeah, it should just be basically the goal of a resume and a cover letter is to get on the phone. So the cover letter is an additional part of you saying why you should get on the phone with me, is what you should be saying. And then resumes there's no right format. I would say you can use any template that you find online, as long as it follows the general guidelines of it. It's clear, it's concise, it's simple, and it tells me, what I need to know from you as a candidate. And what I mean by that is, I prefer it black and white. I think you can do color in a resume well, but if you're nervous about writing a resume, you shouldn't venture off into adding colors or pictures or anything like that. Just keep it simple. The only time I've said, oh, this resume is too simple, is when it's just typed up in Word, like it's not even following a format. But if you follow a general format and keep it simple, it's really all you need. I would say, just as kind of view it as if you're making a PowerPoint for a presentation in class, you don't want to have the people in the audience reading a whole paragraph while you're talking. You want to keep it kind of, I call it the 6x6 rule. So 6 bullet points by 6 words for each bullet point. You can go a little bit longer than that, but that's, generally what you should do. And then have it very action oriented, because I want to know what you did. I want to know what your past projects are, what your experience is. And I think, Ann, in your video, you call this out. Each bullet should usually begin with a really good verb. So it should be managed. It should be researched, reflected, organized. Something that's a really good sort of shows me what you did. And then, as an undergrad, you probably don't have a ton of full-time experience. You might have a few internships, and those are really great. Kind of highlight what you did at those internships, and so take that as an opportunity to keep it simple. Don't feel like you need to add a ton of bullet points for every job, because I'm probably not going to read all of them. To be honest, I'm going to look for those action words. I'm going to see what's clear and concise, and then tell a story. That's the real important thing with a format for a resume is, from the top down or from the bottom up, wherever, or one column to the other column, whatever format that you think looks nice or is clear. I want my eyes to go, okay, they were at school, or they're in school, they had internship 1, they had this job while they were in school working at the registrar, which is where I worked, which is great for your resume. And then all of these kind of in line. I don't want to be jumping back and forth from my eyes. And so a helpful thing there that I tell everyone about resumes is hand your resume to someone that doesn't know what you do or doesn't know who you are, kind of a friend that you're kind of close with, and see if they can tell you who you are and what you've been doing, because that's what I'm going to be doing from someone that doesn't know. And then really keep it simple. Like, some of the things that I look for and that help me is, you don't need to put like phone next to your phone number. I know if it's 10 numbers next to each other, it's probably the phone number that I should call you at. Or if it's at Gmail, I know it's an email. And those are ways where you can kind of clean up your resume and have it look nice. There are a lot of free resources online to make resume templates. Some of them do get more extravagant, so I would say err towards the kind of more clear side. And then because you're not going to have like a ton of jobs or anything, there's going to be extra space in your resume sometimes. And I think at this point in your career, it's really helpful to have a section of kind of a summary or an objective of what you're going to be doing, kind of 2 to 3 sentences of where you're going, what you're looking for, a good general thing. And then be prepared to tailor each resume for each job. I would say it's really helpful to look at job descriptions. I mean, sometimes if you can basically copy and paste what's in a job description, obviously edit it to make it relevant to what you actually did, but you want to use those verbs because you're going to have, verbs in those job descriptions to say what you're looking for. And if you can use those to tell a relevant story, that's going to be really great for me. And then probably one of the main points is skills, softwares, Microsoft Office, any softwares or technologies that you're using. For those and to frame that, I would Google kind of what your relevant field is important to. If it's design, it's going to be completely different than if it's software engineering or any other field. And so keep those skills relevant. And yeah, I think just review it. I'm always working on my resume. I feel like every time I look at the resume I applied for my last job at, I get embarrassed because I think I've learned so much more and it's okay. And then I think that's my general kind of resume overview. Keep it just simple and clean. Don't get too crazy. Don't add pictures of yourself. The 2 other points I had down is because you are graduating, it is okay to include classes that you've taken that you think are relevant. Don't list all classes, but you keep it to a small number of classes that you think are relevant, that kind of show what you've been doing. And then don't include your high school. I don't care where you went to high school. No one cares where you went to high school, really. I see it all the time though. So don't do that. Don't say references available. If a recruiter wants references, they're going to ask for it. It's kind of an outdated thing for you. Everyone knows that you can have references. And then let me see. Say where you're located and where you want to be working if you're open to remote. Sorry, my dog.
Love it.
And it's really important. It's something I always ask is where you working, where you open to relocating, especially because some companies are planning to go back to the office and not have everything fully remote or would like you in part-time. So location is really important. And you can kind of very clearly call that out. And yeah, I'd say those are it's all about getting on the phone. So you want to keep it simple. It's not an autobiography. It is not at all. It is really a quick summary of why you're a fit for that job and why I should get on the phone with you.
That is hugely helpful. I feel like there were some tidbits in there that I learned from. So that's great. Some of it affirms what we already tell students. Some of it's a little bit of an addition. I do wonder about, so, we used to kind of say, oh, you don't need an objective, you don't need a summary. But I wonder now if cover letters are starting to become not as standard, then all of a sudden that summary / objective might become more important on a resume again. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I like it just because for resumes of undergrads and recent grads, there's going to be just so many questions that the recruiter has about what they want to do, where they see their career going and things like that. I would say for a more professional resume after your first job, or if you've had a number of internships, maybe you don't need an objective summary or something. But if you're concerned about how much is on your resume, an objective statement can be a good place to tell that story.
Okay, that's really helpful. Okay, so I do have a couple of questions here, just based on like the things that come up a lot for me when I meet with students. So, I know that there's some industries where maybe major is really important, but I mean, by and large, do you pay attention to the major or do you pay attention more to like the skills and like what they do?
I pay attention to more of the skills and what you do, especially like even between universities, sometimes the majors are different or there's a lot of overlap in what you do. I'd say a good example, like a business major, that's so broad that it doesn't matter to me as much. I look for the past titles. Titles are really important. Titles you've had at past jobs or internships. And then skills as well, kind of different technologies or languages are really important. And I think this kind of is a question. I wouldn't count yourself out to apply for a job just because they say that they want a specific major.
Okay. Okay. That's helpful. So then that's a place, maybe in the resume or in the cover letter or whatever to kind of talk more about like specifically what you did. Like you said, the action oriented pieces of it and like,
Mhm,
more on a more
mhm.
curricular
But
level.
I would say be prepared to explain that though on the phone.
Okay.
So something that I think really helped me in my first job out of college is I was really prepared to explain how a psych major connected to recruiting. I talked about my courses of understanding people, how they think, how I communicated, all of those kind of psych aspects. Be prepared to talk about that, but I don't think that's that important on a resume.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, let's see. When you're reading a resume, what do you spend the most time on? Like, what do your eyes just like go towards immediately?
Hmm. I always check education. I do start there. I don't. I think I don't place the school as much or the degree as much, but really your timeline. If you went and get a master's degrees, I think that's good. And the jobs. I mean, I start with the jobs. That's the easiest. What you've been doing, titles, and then I read probably the first like 2 or 3 bullet points. And so that is important when you are making the bullet points. Think about what order you're putting them in because people do read top down. So you want the most impressive ones to be at the top because I might read 2 or 3 and then jump to the next job and read that. And then skills. Skills are pretty important. Different technologies that you've worked with, things like that.
So helpful. We do talk about that. We're always saying most relevant first, whether it's the job or the bullet point or whatever. So that's helpful to know that holds true.
Mhm.
Let's see.
And that has to do a lot with formatting too, and that's why
Yeah.
formatting is so important. You want it to be so that I know that after I finish reading the jobs, that it's clear to be where the skills are, or where the awards are, or where the classes are. I think that's why formatting is really important. And an example of that, if I see a resume and your name is like horizontal across the top of the page with different arrows pointing different directions, like it's hard for me to follow quickly what's important.
So as a recruiter, you want to be able to get through that resume quickly and in a
Mhm.
way that makes sense to you and kind of flows fast. Sounds like.
Yeah, yeah. Because if you have a good resume and I get through quick, you'll probably get on the phone with me, and then before my call, if I'm reviewing your resume and be like, ooh, I'm not sure about that part of their background or that history of how it would fit with our jobs of what we do. You're already on the phone with me,
It
and
doesn't
at that
matter,
point,
right?
that's great.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
from the time that you're on the phone with a recruiter to offer, your resume will get looked at by different team members, but it's never going to be a, a factor that cuts you out of the process. And so that's something that's really important to remember is it's just about getting on the phone with someone.
Yeah, we say that sometimes. Like the purpose of the resume is to get the interview. It's just to get
Mhm.
the interview. So that's
Yeah.
helpful to hear. Okay, so here's another thing that I'm curious about. So we tell students a lot, like that employers don't care a ton about like whether or not it was a paid position that is on their resume.
Mhm.
So like we'll see a lot of times students will put their paid positions. And then at the bottom of the resume, they might have some volunteer gigs or something like that are actually far more relevant to the position than the
Mhm.
stuff that they got a paycheck for. So,
Mhm.
for you, from a recruiter point of view, do you care whether somebody was paid or do you mostly care about what they did? Like, kind of tell me about that.
No, if it's paid or not, I don't care. I think
Okay.
all interns, I think all of them should be paid. But
Exactly. Yeah.
the main difference is like if I'm volunteering at the dog shelter on the weekends for a couple hours every month, I would say that more falls into like volunteer
Yeah.
opportunities. But if on the side after classes you're spending 10, 15 hours a week working on something, that's a job. It's a part-time job, I think. And I would put that in the section. The fact that it's paid or not doesn't matter at all.
Okay, cool. Okay, let's see. Stuff like fonts, spacing, anything annoy you a whole lot?
Keep it simple and consistent. I mean, don't use like the wildest font. I mean, I know it might seem cool, but like Arial, Times New Roman, like 12-point font is good. What I do like is you can call things out specifically by using bold or italics or like a slightly different font. So on my resume, what I do is I'll have like the title and of the role and the company in like bold and then 14 font, and then underneath it it'll be like the location and 12 font, and you can use kind of cool scaling elements while keeping it simple there. And then consistent. I do like to see that spacing is consistent between jobs. Everything's in line on the side. I do like to see that you've put effort and in focus on the detail there. But don't know anyone that's going to count you out because you used a font that they didn't like, unless it was like Comic Sans or some unpopular font.
Oh, Comic Sans.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe Comic Sans is having to come back. I don't know.
It is, and I regretted it the moment I said it, but it is.
In like a kind of an ironic way.
Yeah.
Okay, so so the last thing I was kind of hoping you would maybe comment on a little bit is, and I just know this because we met when you were a senior and you were a psychology major, and then you kind of made this shift to a business job search. And I would just love to hear if you had any tips or anything, because I mean, it's not uncommon for us to have students who are, obviously all kinds of liberal arts majors, humanities, all kinds of things. And maybe they want to transition into an industry that is slightly different than what their major is. And I think that's just, that's the beauty and the nature of a liberal arts degree. And so I don't know if you just had any thoughts or tips or words of wisdom on that.
It was difficult. I mean, I remember those times, like 3 years ago, figuring out what I wanted to do. I didn't really know that I wanted to do recruiting until kind of after graduation, when I started to search for a job and look at a lot of different titles. And so that is my first recommendation, is just spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. That's my main thing. It's just probably be on LinkedIn. There are some other thing, fields that are specific that don't use LinkedIn, but I would say just get on LinkedIn, build up a basic profile, and then start looking at job titles. If there is a job that's like 10 years of experience, someone had to have a couple different jobs to get to those 10 years of experience. So figure out what those titles were, look at their career and things like that. And don't worry about shifting your focus based on your degree or what you're doing. It's some staggering statistic of how many people that are in a field outside of their degree, which is not a bad thing. So it does make it harder, like it's less clear, and you have to tell the story. That's kind of the main thing, is telling the story of why you're making that change, and making it a good reason. And so adapt your resume to tell that story. Again, resumes aren't everything that you've ever done. So if you remove one internship because you have extra space, or it looks okay without it, to tell a better story for another job, that's completely okay. I think it's about telling the story to make that change and trying different things. And this is a recommendation for that, and just general, is don't take it personal when you get rejected. If you get rejected from 50 people that were all your dream jobs, it's not personal. It's just a kind of a relationship building. You have to find the right match, and you want someone that wants you at their company. And so you'll probably have a little bit more difficulty, making those changes, but I don't think it's something that should deter you from doing it, especially if you can tell a good story. That's when you have to put more effort into writing cover letters, or making those changes. And don't be afraid to apply to jobs. I think unless I see that you apply to a different job, and I can't see this in our applicant tracking systems. If you apply to the same job, or multiple jobs every week for 6 months, like that, is going to be a bad sign. But if you apply to a job, usually 1 or 2 jobs at a company every 6 to 12 months, and even if they're outside of your scope of what you do, I think that's totally fine. Don't be afraid to apply for anything. I even that kind of gets into another recommendation is apply to things that you're stretching for. I was just today, I moved forward I moved forward a candidate that had 1 year of experience as a front-end engineer, and they applied for a senior software engineer role that needed like 5 to 7 years of experience. And I got on the phone with them because I liked their resume. They look good. And then we talked to the hiring managers and we said, yeah, of course we can hire a junior software engineer right now, because they were a good fit. So it is about getting on the phone with the candidates, and there's a lot of moving parts behind the scenes that you don't see of when we can hire people or what we can't hire. And so just apply to, it's a numbers game really. And it hurts. Even professionals that have 10 years of experience spend months and months applying to jobs. It doesn't make it any easier. So don't take it as a sign that you shouldn't be getting that job or in that career.
That's just amazing advice. And I think, especially right now when it feels like a scary kind of job market out there. And but just, and I know that our students tend to err on the side of thinking they don't qualify. I don't know what it is, but like most students I talk with don't err on the side of like, oh sure, I could do that job. It's more like, oh, I don't know. I have needed 5 years of experience, and I can't do that. But I'm often telling people, just try. So
yeah, it's scary, just finding a job and that whole interviewing and everything. But I think if you just keep trying, you'll figure it out eventually.
Yeah.
And
yeah, go ahead.
no, I think that's it. The one thing I do add is if you are getting frustrated, not every company sends you a rejection email, so you might not hear back, but don't be afraid to ask for feedback on what you were missing. That's a good time to change your resume if they do give you feedback. It's pretty rare, but it's good to ask, and then you can kind of get on the phone with people and connect with them, reach out over LinkedIn. I think one of the things that you recommended to me when I first started looking for a job outside of school was like a Willamette alumni network. I know all of my Willamette alumni friends and everyone I talk to is, if you just go to the Willamette's LinkedIn page, you can see tons of alumni and search for job titles or what they're doing. Just reach out. No one gets annoyed from getting connected on LinkedIn. I would say include a message. Like it does, I guess it does get annoying if you send a ton of LinkedIn requests without a message of why you want to connect. But there's always the option to include a message for free on why you want to connect and talk, and ask for like 50 minutes of their time to talk with them, because it's going to help you practice you talking. And then Willamette alum are pretty good at finding other people jobs, or at least helping you.
That's awesome to hear, because we do recommend that a lot. So I forgot to ask this. So maybe this is my last question. I keep thinking of things. But as a recruiter, are you ever annoyed hearing from people just saying, hey, I researched your company, I'm interested, like, can we talk or whatever? Like what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, no, I'm never annoyed. I think the best way, unless you have like I don't know what LinkedIn regular looks like right now, because I have a premium account as a recruiter. But if you have InMails, or if you have kind of just send a connection request with a message, I'm never annoyed. I think the only time I am annoyed is when I don't know why you're reaching out, because you didn't include a message or something like that. But
yeah, so the message is pretty critical. Okay, that's great to know.
Yeah, and ask for time. I mean, I think it's totally okay to reach out and ask, especially if you have a reason of you like their career or job that they're in right now, and just want to learn more. I mean, especially people are generally into themselves and like to boast and talk about themselves, and so it's easy to get on the phone with someone.
Great. Okay, that's super helpful. I feel like you covered everything I wanted to know. That was super helpful. I am just so grateful to you for providing this time, and I know that our students will view this, and it's affirming to us as a career development office, but also just hearing some of the additional things that you had to say is just super helpful. I know for me, and I know it will be for our students too. So.
Yeah,
So thank you so
of
much.
course. Well, happy to talk with anyone that has questions more, kind of look at their resume, or feel free to shoot me a message on LinkedIn or connect. I'm happy to help any Willamette alum, especially in these kind of tough times of finding a job. I can't
Yeah.
imagine.
Thank you so much.